How to Be a Worship Bass Player series. This was originally going to be one video, but the conversation ran so long that we had to end up splitting it into two. So this is part two. If you didn't check out part one, go back and watch that first and then come back here. In this video, we talk about preparation and context as it relates to playing bass in a worship band. So hope you enjoy it. Here we go. All right, so your second point that you have, and I love this one, you call it worship in the preparation. And I resonate a lot with that because I think a lot of us, when we think of worship in a worship band as a musician, we think of that as like we're on the stage, we're doing the thing in the moment. That is the worship. And that's true, but equally as important is the week leading up to the weekend, right? That is just as much worship because you got to prepare. Because if you're not prepared, then you get to the weekend and you don't know your stuff. Right. You can't worship freely. Just talk a little more about what you mean by worshiping in preparation.
Yeah, I mean, this is a section where we could get really philosophical on what exactly worship is, because I personally don't think worship is just singing songs.
Sure.
I mean, that's an aspect. But I think how we use our time and how intentional we are with our time is also a form of worship. We put a lot of preparation into the weekend. We put a lot of preparation into just showing up to the rehearsal so that we're prepared. And then oftentimes for me, it's about executing. And for me, a lot of times I think about that's an offering to God. Is like I'm gonna execute and give Him the best that I have. Like I'm gonna give this the best that I have. It's for the congregation so that they can worship.
Sure.
And so some of the most worshipful moments that I've had is honestly when I'm at home alone, upstairs, practicing and like preparing for this and like getting into it and dissecting things, and like actually playing through things. Like I can have really worshipful moments at home alone. And then, if you have those moments and then you show up to rehearsal, it's just, you can create like more of a powerful moment too, I think.
Yeah, so maybe just quick fire like some of the practical things in your preparation.
So typically the songs will get posted either that week or the week before. So I'll get onto Planning Center kind of early in the week. And I'll just look through the set, kind of see do I recognize these songs first of all? And then if there's something that I don't recognize, then I'm going to really I'll know that I'll have to put in more time into it. But even so, early on in the week, I'll listen through to the songs, and I start my practicing even without the bass, without the bass in my hands, just by listening. And the things that I'm listening for right off the bat are the tempos of the song, the intervals especially. I don't have perfect pitch, but over years of practicing, I think we can develop relative pitch and be able to hear intervals and sort of understand what's happening, regardless of what key it's in, knowing the intervals. So I'm listening through to kind of the progression and the form of the song. When does the bass come in? Is he right up at the top? A lot of times bass doesn't come in till the chorus or second verse, and there's all that space. So noting that the first time that I listened to some of the things.
Cool.
And then just some overall like tone concepts of like, does this sound gritty or is this really chill? And then I can start to think of like how am I going to play this, like with my fingers, with my thumb? Do I need a pick? Are there any other things that I can do to make it sound the way I want it to sound?
Are you thinking of these things still in the stage of just listening?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, before you even pick up the instrument, you can formulate all those thoughts of like, what are the intervals? What is the tempo here? Is this intense? Is there a lot of energy in the song? Is it laid back? Those types of things.
That's interesting.
And a lot of times too, it's listening for specific parts that stick out, not just the intervals, but like, maybe on the second verse there's a line that comes out, and it's like, I'm gonna have to make note of that. I'm gonna have to go back and like kind of listen to it and figure that out.
This is interesting because I think a mistake I've made in my prep is like I have my guitar in my hand, I open the song for the first time, and I'm trying to learn it as it goes, where it's like, maybe I should just take this in first, have an idea, and then go for it. That's really cool.
Yeah, well, and there's no right or wrong way to do it. But I think as a good exercise, it's cool to start with listening. You know, there are many times where I'll sit down and maybe the week is really busy, and all of a sudden I just got to jump in and start practicing, trying to force myself to play along with stuff I've never heard before.
Yeah, something I just thought of. I did a session last year and was with incredible musicians and an incredible producer, and that's what we did before each time we went to record. We'd just play the demo and we'd listen to the demo 3 times, and we'd just be like, and then producer would stop the track and be like, what do you guys think we should do? And that just like blew my mind. I'm not really a session guy, so that's probably a normal thing, but I mean, kind of the same of like really internalize the song. And for our context, you know, we have all the instruments and the examples, but just like really taking in the song and like deciding what you're gonna do before you even, like my guitar was in the other room, so I have to really think about it.
Right. Context, that's a really good word that you used. And I think context is really important. What's awesome about the way we do it at Brook is that you give us the songs, you give us almost the script. This isn't like, hey, let's all just ad-lib and improvise and create our own thing. There are some aspects of creativity. This isn't just memorize and regurgitate what we memorized.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like we have the script. So for me personally, like I like to learn the parts. I like to learn exactly what was given to me.
Yeah.
And the way I make it my own is through like nuance, little like how am I going to get from there to there? How am I going to do that? Tonal things, the way in which I play with my hands.
Yep.
Like that's how I make it my own. But I'm not going off of script a ton. You know.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, I think that there are other contexts where that's really appropriate, but I haven't often found it to be super appropriate in this context. Like, hey, I'm just gonna take a solo.
Yeah.
It's like, no.
Well, we kind of got there already. That's your third point, right? Context.
Yeah.
Context, I guess, role of a worship bass player. I mean, in what we're in our field in this specific gig or thing, worship is the genre. It's the context, right? So. I mean, you've already given the examples of how you learn our context, like just learn the part for part. We're given the script, so there's our context. Yeah, anything more on context? Because that's something I preach so much in the guitar world is like, worship is a genre that we need to learn. I mean, at least in guitar world, we've got, you know, the temptation, even for me, is to like insert my vibe into it, which again, we need to be creative and we have a lot to offer, but also if you're not careful, you're now playing a different style and it doesn't fit the context, right? So we really need to make sure we know that. But any more on context or anything like that?
Yeah, well, context and intentionality, but back to earlier in our conversation, I think is woven throughout. And I do love how we, even the way the sets are set up is intentional, where we talk about like 1 slot, 2 slot, 3 slot type of songs where, you know, that 1 slot will have a little more energy and then maybe be a more fun, like exciting song. And oftentimes, it's not always this way, but oftentimes, you know, we start with the energy and then we lead up to a song that's like totally pointing towards Jesus, and that's the goal of the whole flow is to like get us to the point where we're just like all out worship. So even just knowing that context, like how can a bass player, how can a musician be a part of like creating that smooth flow? Yeah. And so just knowing that like, hey, this first song, I'm gonna inject more energy and excitement into it, and it's about fun. Second slots, third slots, we get to a spot where maybe we're playing more like contemplative and like intense, like connecting of our head and our heart and that type of thing. You know, thinking about it in those terms too of like, what can I do to help facilitate that? You know?
That's cool. I mean, that getting more nitty gritty into the context. Not even just saying like, well, it's a specific genre, but like, what are we doing actually? Like, why does the song have to sound a certain way? Because we want people to connect their head and their heart, and really just trying to always think about like what is it that we're doing here, and how do I insert my thing into it.
I talked a little bit about as far as the role of a bass player. The bass and the drums are definitely like the rhythm section, and there's more instruments involved in rhythm than just that. But drums get to come in and establish the tempo. And I've heard it said the lead singer, the lead vocalist, it's their bus, but the drummer is driving the bus. And I've always thought in that analogy, it's like, well, what is a bass player doing? Well, I feel like the bass player's job is to like make the seats on the bus comfortable. The drummer's locking in this tempo, this grid, and the bass player can like really fluidly make it feel good, you know?
Yeah.
And so
you're the seat, man.
yeah, I'm the cushy seat. You know? Like maybe sometimes it's one of those plastic hard seats that most buses have.
Depends on the bass player.
Yeah, it just depends. Also, playing bass isn't simply about just locking in with drums. Isn't about just focusing on that kick drum and how can I just lock in with that. I mean, that's a huge aspect of it too, but bass relates so much to vocals as well, because vocals, unless, I mean, I'm sure there are some cultures and contexts where people can sing two notes, but I can't. Most people in this context can't do that. So
actually, he's a good singer, though. By the way.
Well, I like to think of bass, melodically, and so when also in the preparation, I'm not only thinking about my role and how I fit in with the drums, but also how I like support the vocalist. I think that's really huge.
Yeah, I always think of Grady Kennevan, amazing drummer, used to play at Eagle Brook. He always told me, I listen to the vocals.
Yeah.
The vocals are the most important thing.
Right.
And I'm like, a drummer is saying that? That's so cool. I mean, it is. Like, the people connect with the lyrics the most, and so whatever your instrument is, if you're listening to vocals and supporting, like, if your main thing, if nothing else, is to support the vocal to whatever capacity you can, I mean, it's a win. It's going to be a win, for sure.
Right. And not just the bass player, but if everyone on a team, I think what I love most about music is just being a part of a team. But if everybody on the team puts in the preparation and comes prepared so that they can be intentional and they can speak into this context, whether it's vocals, guitars, keys, bass, drums, if we're all intentional and we're all like creating together as a team, like that's where like really cool things happen.
Yeah, absolutely. People feel that chemistry.
Right, yeah.
Yeah.
And again, there are contexts that allow for more like unintentionality and more like improvisation, but that's not really, I don't think, what we're doing here.
For sure. It can be a positive thing or a negative thing depending on who you are or what you're hoping for, but I see it as a positive. I'm kind of a guitar nerd, and I look at like all these Nashville guys on YouTube. They have these YouTube channels and they talk about just what they do, and it's amazing, but they all talk about how they are students of their contexts, about their genres, and so they just know how to insert themselves. So they could probably get an incredible gig with whatever band. Maybe it's not even their favorite style, but they got to be disciplined and play it, and that's the gig, you know? Man, I mean, we could keep talking for hours. This is all such good stuff, but I think we locked in those three ideas. We got intentionality, we got worshiping in the preparation, and context / your role. Well, context and your role within the context. So incredible stuff, man. Thanks for being a part of this. Yeah. I hope that was helpful for you guys. Good luck as you prepare on the weekend for bass. And if you haven't already, subscribe to this channel. We release content every single month for all instruments as it relates to worship. So whether you play at Eagle Brook or another church, I think this stuff can be helpful for you. So stay tuned for more. Goodbye. See you later.